Welcome back, everyone. Now, I know I've been doing a lot of arcade videos lately, but I wanted to, spend a little bit of time with some console games and show you guys a couple of games by the same developers that I think are really great and sort of a little underappreciated. So the first one here is Flink for the Sega CD, and it's also sometimes known as the Misadventures of Flink. And it was released in 1994. And the people that worked on this game, it was actually a very small studio, and now both of these games were published by Psygnosis. And back at that time in the 90s, really what they functioned as was sort of a publishing house for independent developers. So you would have a lot of these really great games come, a lot of garbage too, but a lot of really great games come out of very small development teams, which is the case of both of these, and then they would get published and people could play them. So the team that made Flink consisted of Erwin Kloiphofer, and he did all of the level designs for the game. And he also did all the level designs for Lomax here, which would be our next game. And I'm not sure, I've been trying to do a little research to sort of figure out what these guys are up to now, but I wasn't able to find a whole lot of information for him. I do know that he worked as a programmer on Max Payne 2. But I'm not really sure of a whole lot of other things other than that. The other person that's really important in the design of the game was Hank Nieborg, and he did all of the pixel art. And that's one of the things that's immediately apparent about both of these games, is the pixel art is incredible. Now, more recently, he's been doing DS games primarily. And if any of you guys have seen the Shantae game, I think it's called Risky's Revenge. But anyway, the Shantae game on the DS. If you've seen some of he does the backgrounds for that game, and you can actually see if you've seen these two games and you sort of know his style, you can see a lot of similarities there. He also has a website, so I'll actually put a link in the description there if you want to look at some of his pixel art and that sort of thing. Now, the other important person on Flink was Matthias Steinwachs, and he did all of the music, and the music in this game is really incredible. I mean, I really love it, and I can't say enough good things about it. It really sets the storyline really well, and it's just really well-written music. And for him, for the most part, as far as I can tell, he's been doing mostly PC games since then. Now, Flink was actually originally released for the Amiga CD32 system, and it was ported over to the Sega CD. And a few years later, they sort of got back together. They got the band back together, and they released a game for the original PlayStation, and this is called Lomax, or The Adventures of Lomax. And this game has a very similar graphic style. And both of these games are essentially platformers, but what's cool is they're kind of platformers with a twist. There's always an extra mechanic. In Flink, you have the ability to collect items and you create spells that will do different things, and you actually need some of the spells to unlock some of the levels, which is very cool. In Lomax, the primary thing that's cool is you've got different helmets that you can wear, and different abilities that you can pick up here and there that you actually need to use to get to different parts of the game. So in both cases, I should also mention the sound on this one. I don't like the music as much on Lomax, to be perfectly honest. And it's hard to really sort of put my finger on it, but I do know that there was more of a sound design team involved rather than a single composer. And I don't know that really makes any difference as far as the end quality of the product, because there are plenty of games, of course, with sound design teams that have great soundtracks. But in this case, I think maybe it was a little unfocused, And the music in this one, is fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but I think it's a little bit of a letdown after Flink. So in any case, let's take a closer look at the games. One of the first things that you notice in this game during the intro here is just how beautiful Henk Nieborg's pixel art is. And also, those of you who are familiar with the Amiga system, you can realize that this really does kind of look like an Amiga game. And again, the artwork in this game is just really incredible and beautiful. Here at the title screen, you can see some of the basic game mechanics that you'll be using during the game. And these guys here, you want to watch out because honestly they go a lot faster than you do, and you want to collect those things from them. Also, you've got this guy here that actually steals your items, which is an interesting little twist on the game here. Now when it starts up, you can see this big cloud is sort of rolling over the landscape and sort of messing everything up, I suppose. You can see here that there are items that you can pick up and use to your advantage, and these are throughout the levels. There's also these different treasure chests which will pop up at times and give you different power-ups and whatnot, and different items. Also, you can pick up the treasure chests and throw them at enemies, which becomes very useful later on in the game for different strategic purposes. Now also you can sort of slide down these inclines here and take enemies out that way. Now when you kill enemies, and you'll notice here actually I picked this one up, and the reason is, again, these guys that carry things, it's easier honestly just to throw another enemy at them than it is to actually try to take them out yourself. Now I will say one of the interesting things about this game is that your magic and sort of your health bar are the same, and you can see that up in the upper left hand corner there. Now each time you kill an enemy, you sort of inherit, I guess, their spirit or something of that nature, and that fills up your magic. Also, the bottles of red potion in some of the treasure chests will fill that up, and that acts as both sort of a health meter, and you do need that for the creation of different spells in the game.
in some of the treasure chests, you will also find these little notes here, in addition to the spells themselves, or at least how to make them. And the little notes will tell you different information about the game and how to play it. Now, one of my gripes about the game is it's kind of a little control anomaly here. When you actually want to grip some of these different vines and whatnot, you actually have to use the A button, which is your action button, to do so. Which seems a little cumbersome at first, but once you get used to it, it's definitely not a deal breaker for this game. Here's a little bit of footage from the second world in the game, and unfortunately I did collect footage from most of the worlds in the game, but my DVD recorder kind of messed up, or I guess I messed up, and lost a lot of it. So I only have footage from the first 2 worlds of the game, but you can kind of get an idea of what the general look of the game and the incredible pixel art that you can see in this. Here's a look at the first end boss to the first world, and unfortunately I didn't do such a great job on this one. You can see I actually hit myself quite a bit on this one, but anyway, it gives you kind of an idea of what the end bosses look like and the different kinds of mechanics that you use to defeat them. And when you defeat each one of the 4 elders is released, and they give you some, general information. It's not really all that useful, but kind of an interesting little sort of RPG-ish twist to the gameplay. Now here we have the title screen for Lomax, our second game, and after watching the footage of Flink, you can immediately see the similarities in the game, not only in the gameplay, but the art style. It's a very similar type game. Also, you'll see in this little intro here, when you fall in the water, you don't immediately drown, although you can't swim, so you only get 1 jump once you've hit the water here. So in this game, instead of having your treasure chests, which will sometimes give you information, you have these little sort of magic hats here, and when you jump into them, a guy will appear, and he'll tell you different things about the game, gameplay aspects, those sorts of things. Now, you have 2 basic attacks, and you saw I just collected a helmet there. You don't get that directly off the bat. You have to collect those from the little pots there. And your different attacks are, you can either do this sort of spin attack, and you'll be invincible during that, so this one is actually really useful. The good thing about those vines there is that you don't have to press an action button to jump onto them. The other attack that you have if you're wearing one of the helmets is you can actually throw your helmet at the enemy, and this can be a nice kind of long-range attack, and you can see it right there. The only downside is if your enemy is on a lower platform than you, or lower on the same platform, it's hard to hit them sometimes. And also you don't have the invincibility, so sometimes the spin attack is definitely your safest way to go. As I mentioned before, at different points in the game you can pick up special abilities, and you'll need those to progress through the game. You can see I just selected one there, and this particular one allows you to sort of lay out these little boards here. You can see at the top left I have it selected, and I have 3 more of those left at that particular point. There's also some, somewhat difficult platforming in different levels, and this particular one, of course, you want to avoid the water. And as I said before, if you fall in, don't worry, you're not going to drown or anything, but you do need to jump out of the water fairly quickly, and you only get one jump to make a platform. So sometimes if you fall in at the wrong place, you actually can't really get back out. Also, you notice this sort of big fish following me along at the bottom, and the fish will attack you. Also, these barrels are kind of an interesting little mechanic. You run on them, and those can get you from one place to another. One of the other things I wanted to mention about Lomax that differs from Flink, and I think is a major improvement, is there's a password system in this game to save your progress, and it's not too difficult to navigate. And that way you can you can play this at different times, pick it back up, and start where you left off, rather than having to play the entire game in one sitting like you did with Flink. Another interesting mechanic in the game is this sort of pseudo 3D element here. You can see this little bridge behind me here. You can actually walk across it and get to the background level. Although you do want to make sure to be careful about when you go back there and look at your enemies back there, and make sure that you're not going to run into one, because if you time that wrong, you actually will run into the enemy and get hit, even though you don't really have a chance to attack them first. Here's another one of my favorite levels in the game. There are a few of these, and these are these sort of cemetery-ish levels, and you have these kind of zombie characters in here, and a lot of them will take 2 hits, so you do have to be careful with that, and I recommend using the spin attack a little bit more. That way you're invincible, because if you do throw your helmet, in my experience, you usually end up getting hit by one of the zombies. Here we have one of the sort of pirate ship levels, and in these there's a lot of, I wouldn't say, the most difficult platforming ever, but, there's some fairly difficult platforming, and you do have to watch out because the enemies will throw things at you from higher levels, and it can be a little bit tricky to navigate at times. Also in this one, they make use of the good 3D, or the interesting sort of 3D effects of going from one level of the game to another. In a lot of these later levels, the platforming actually gets quite difficult, and so it does require a little bit of extra memorization. You can see here, if you don't know that enemy's there, that can become somewhat of a problem. I do like these sort of sperm whales here that you have to jump over, and then the bubbles that you have to jump into. It makes for a nice challenge. Here's one of the sort of western desertish levels, and these guys here with the cowboy hats and the guns are actually a real pain to get rid of, because when you hit them the first time, you can see they actually start shooting these little projectile things that will explode and damage you. And you can see here, if you wait too long, then that second attack actually won't take them out. You have to hit them twice in pretty quick succession. One of the other difficult things about the later levels here that you'll see is some of them, as I said before, the platforming gets more and more difficult as you go along. And here you have these jets that you have to use to get to different platforms, and the timing has to be just perfect on these. And you can see, obviously, I missed that one there. Some of them are very difficult. Now, if you make it all the way through the game, you're rewarded with what I like to call the Scrooge McDuck level here. And there aren't any enemies in the level. There are just all of these, different chances to pick up the gold coins. And you can see them swinging in the bags overhead. And if you knock those down, then they just sort of spew coins everywhere that you can pick up. Now, to my knowledge, when I was playing this game, this level actually just repeats. And so there's not... there's not really, as far as I can tell, a real ending to the game. You just keep playing this, I guess, until you die. But kind of a nice, fun last level to this game. So, in conclusion, I think if you can find either of these games at reasonable prices, and most of the time they're not really that expensive, you should definitely pick them up and check them out.